If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniac. Hey everyone, I have a really bad throat at the minute, so sorry this video is not as long. I'm taking some medication for it and I should be back to normal by Monday. Hope you're all having a great day and enjoy this video. In my college days, now 20 years ago, me and my friends often took off to the North Georgia mountains on the weekend. We wanted to smoke, drink and commute with nature. These mountains were perfect. One weekend, however, this unsettling event occurred to me. My friend Bill and his German Shepherd Monty headed out towards Sky Valley. It was the beginning of the fall semester at UGA, and not much was going on yet. We had found an area where a dirt road led back half a mile, and then we would hike in another mile or so and set up near a creek. Excellent trails were nearby with fun places to explore, not to mention flat ground perfect for setting up camp. Bill and I arrived at our spot at around 4 PM and we got a fire going. We were musicians, Bill playing a guitar and me being a percussionist, so we started jamming. After 10 minutes, we chatted about life and girls before tucking in for the night. It was a clear night, so we just slept under the stars. It is important to take note that we have not seen any sign of any other people in the area during any of our other trips. At about 2 in the morning though, I'm awoken by Monty growling, a deep growl that I've never heard before. Bill was still dead to the world, that'd be me. And I sat up and looked around and listened, thinking maybe an animal had come to our campsite. The fire was only embers at this point. I hear barely audible voices in the distance. Focusing on the area of the voices, I see a faint red glow, followed by another faint glow to the left of the first. This is about 100 yards away, my mind connecting what I'm seeing. Cigarette embers burning that are approaching us. "Bill, wake up," I whisper. Bill rose from his sleep and has no idea what's happening, and I explain to him. At this point, Monty started barking as the strangers approach our camp. Now around this time, the others stood up, who were completely unfazed by our now rabid 80-pound German Shepherd, and we see two incredibly unkept late 30s or 40s looking weird guys. Bill told Monty to calm down. I'll never forget the look of these guys, skinny as hell, about 5'8", looking like something out of a swamp horror film, and probably 5 teeth between them, each having huge knives attached to their belts. "What you boys doing out here? Looks like you're having fun," they said. We responded and told them that we had been out there to camp and drink some beer, then asking for one, to which we gave them. They said did we want to hang out with them, and we declined, saying we have to be out early. Now throughout the conversation, anything Bill or I said, they looked at each other before responding. Finally, before leaving, one of them said, "You'll stay safe, you never know who you could run into out here," and winked as they walk away laughing. We pack up a few hours later and leave and never went back there again. The fact that we're only awoken because of the dog still terrifies me. As I've mentioned in my previous post before, my family has had some remote land up in the mountains outside of Eureka. I come down here a few times every year and haven't really experienced anything too out of the ordinary. But last night was different. Different to say the least. I didn't know this before, but apparently this area is pretty popular for UFO sightings. I still don't know if that's what this was, but I'm having a very hard time to come up with a logical explanation. We had a good fire going for a few hours, and after everyone else went to bed, it was just my dad, my fiance and I left. So we're all gathered round there, just talking, even about constellations. So we all leaned back and were staring up at the sky. My fiance then pointed out a light that was noticeably brighter than the stars. It was steadily moving. Immediately I figured it as a satellite, but my dad chimed up with, "I don't think it is. Watch it for a second." My dad and I are hugely into aliens, and both have had a fair amount of sightings in the past. I focused closer on the light, and saw it wasn't just gliding across in a straight line, it was zigzagging, back and forth, moving eastwards. Three of us are explaining about how weird it was when suddenly it screeched towards the southern mountains. I'm thinking to myself, okay, is this actually happening? The light just stopped suddenly, hovering above the mountain for at least 5 minutes. At this point, we're all saying it's definitely not a satellite, with the occasional comment like, "Wow, this is wild." The light started to shift again to the right until it was behind a tree, and we lose sight of it completely. We went back to the normal campfire for a couple of minutes, and my fiance gets some drinks. As soon as he got up, the entire sky lit up in an almost painfully bright white flash, like lighting on steroids. This was a crystal clear night. There wasn't a storm on the radar for miles and miles. We couldn't even see one little wispy cloud. It could not have been lighting. My dad and I are the only ones who saw it, as most people were asleep and my fiance's inside. There wasn't a single sound when it happened, no boom or rumble, but the entire mountain went dead silent for a few minutes after. I mean, honestly, it's just so eerie. It's like time around us paused momentarily, and my dad ended up feeling so uncomfortable and anxious that he just went to bed. The two of us stayed up for a while after, but we didn't see anything weird or any flashes, but we had a very heavy sense of unease afterwards. Back in October of 1989, my mum and I went up to the western part of Northern Carolina for a week to see the leaves change colour. We rented a cabin which was owned by the cousin of my brother's former high school band teacher who had retired several years earlier. The band director was more or less keeping watch over the place. Now, he actually lived down the street, but it wasn't until Friday afternoon that we saw him. The cabin was somewhat in the wilderness, but it was near a main road. The band director had to go away for the weekend and was letting us know. We had the name of the cousin in case we needed any help. This was on a Friday afternoon. Up until that time, the trip has been uneventful. Friday evening we went to a church dinner, which was down the road. When we came back home, it's already dark. My mum started thinking about, we're the only ones on this road, and we don't know where the nearest neighbour was, which is a little unsettling. The moon wasn't full, but there was light to the moon. We had separate rooms in the cabin. The power went out in the cabin shortly after we come back from the church dinner. Then my mother heard what sounded like footsteps, and she saw what looked like an outline of a hat. There was a man walking around near the cabin. Then we saw this hat disappear to the woods. By this time, both of us are terrified that this man is going to come into the cabin to hurt us. both of us wondering if he had cut the power source. I decided to sleep in bed, which is near my mum's room. We tried to sleep, but then are awoken by an owl howling. My mum could see the owl's eyes, which are looking into the window. The drake couldn't be closed entirely. The owl didn't take its eyes off my mum the entire night. The owl also hooted all night. My mum tried to ignore the owl, but its presence really unnerved her, and this unnerved me. Neither of us could sleep at every noise that jarred us. It would be like, what's that? What noise is that? And every once in a while we would see the outline of the hat walking around the general area. Then it'd go off into the woods. Both of us are freaked out at this point, but we weren't about to leave in the middle of night. There was no phone in the cabin, and this is long before cell phones were in common usage. The power did finally come back on several hours later, or seemed to. Now originally we were gonna leave on the Sunday, but as soon as the sun came up on Saturday, we left. A couple of days later my mum got a call from the band director. Apparently the man we saw was a mountain man who was very weird and done weird things around other cabins and is known in the area. This happened to my FIL probably 10 years ago in a hunting cabin in Alabama. It popped into my head as we're heading out there tomorrow for a few days of deer hunting. He told me to go ahead and share the story. It's short, but as I get a little creeped out in the woods, this would have freaked me out. So, as many people probably know, we get out an hour or so before light and climb into a tree, into a stand, usually fairly deep into the hunt. Now on this morning, my FIL has been in his stand for a couple hours, and it was getting light and he was reading a book as he wanted to wait for something to happen. Out of the fog, he heard a woman's voice much closer than anyone should have been to him at that time. She's calling Hunter, oh Hunter, in a very singy voice, like a mother calling to her child. Now as I said, we're pretty deep in the woods. There are sticks and dried leaves everywhere. You generally make a pretty good racket getting to your stand, which is why we get out so early. Not only that, but in order to know where he was and spot him in the camouflage tree, she must have seen his light when he walked out and followed him into the woods and waited hours before calling him. His first thought was that the woman was calling someone named Hunter, maybe her son. She called again and realizes that he is a hunter. She turns around, peers around the trees and sees a young woman. She, in very few words and in halting speech, explains that something's wrong with her hot water heater and wants to know if he can come and look. Now the strangeness of the situation hasn't set in yet, and he's a give the shirt off his back kind of guy. Not to mention he's nearly 6'2", 300 pounds with a gun. So he wasn't too worried about this small woman and starts getting down to have a look. He follows her back to her mobile home, which borders our hunting land, probably about 10 minutes away. She walks inside, leaving the door open. He is trailing behind a little, so as he gets to the door, kind of knocks and sticks his head in to say hello. There's no answer. When he entered the laundry room, he can see there is a hot water heater and it's just pouring out of the bottom. Just absolutely pouring, I mean. He walks over and turns the valve off and says hello again, but hears nothing. The house is empty. Empty of people anyway. A disaster is inside though. At this point, he's starting to see how strange it is, and decides that this is just a kind of situation where you get robbed then murdered and nopes out of there. Now, we have hunted this land for years since and have never seen anyone at this place. Every time I pass her place, it sends chills up my spine. I don't know if she was a ghost or something, but this was definitely some kind of setup, and I'm glad that we all got out of there okay. Had we been weaker, smaller targets, I'm sure the whole situation would have gone a lot differently. I went hiking with my boyfriend and a few of his friends. The 5 of us were heading up a not so popular mountain trail that's about 10 minutes long up to a small lake. We saw 2 couples on their way down, but no one had passed us on our way up. Now the trail isn't super easy, and wildlife is pretty common. We see a moose about 3 miles in, so we're all on guard for more moose or a mountain lion or anything that can cause a problem. After the moose, we ran into a small patch of snow that's maybe 100 feet along the trail. Past the snow, we walk about another 20 to 30 yards and find a deer's ribcage and spine. We gathered around it not saying much, and one of the guys turns it over with a stick. It was picked totally clean. After we stand up, an older guy is standing like 10 feet away from us just staring. Not one of us heard or saw him walk up. It was like he just appeared. After we make eye contact, he just turns around, jumps over the little creek, cutting through 18 inches of snow, then walking up the side of the mountain to disappear.